Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
Guy walks in the door, walks up to the woman behind the counter, and he says, "I'd like a hamburger and order of fries, please." And she says, "This is a library." "Oh," he said, "I'm sorry. I'd like a hamburger and an order of fries, please."
We're talking today about questions that parents are afraid to ask. When we come to LGBTQ issues, if you're a parent and your child comes out, there can be all kinds of emotions and feelings and concerns. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to be a bigot or say something that's going to be hurtful. There can be a lot of things that you might be wondering about and you're not sure who to ask. You maybe don't even want to admit to yourself that you have some of these questions. We thought this would make a perfect topic for an episode. We're going to go through some of those questions that you might be afraid to ask. You might be afraid even to admit to yourself that you have these questions.
Well, as a parent, I can tell you that I definitely have had some of those questions as you first came out. It kind of hit me by surprise, so I didn't expect any of that to come along. And when it did, I realized I've got a lot of questions, but I felt like I was walking on eggs because I wasn't sure what I could say and what I couldn't say. And I know Mom was the same way.
For sure. And when we compiled these questions, I think a lot of these come directly from your experience, and a lot more come from just other things that we see parents wondering in general. So, Dad, let's have you read the questions since you are the parent and people can identify with you, and then we'll talk through the answer. I'll give you my thoughts, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, that sounds good to me. One of the first things I thought of actually was, did I cause this by doing something wrong? Is that what forced you to decide that you wanted to transition?
And I can completely understand that. And I think that you did have some thoughts of that, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, wondering, is there anything, did I do something wrong in upbringing or parenting or anything? Now, you know, if you've raised more than one child, anybody that has, you know that children have a personality of their own. And even if you do the exact same things in the exact same way, every child will react differently because we're all wired differently. Every one of us as people is wired differently.
No two are exactly alike. And it actually, people will say it's the same thing about pets. If you have a dog and the dog dies, you get another dog. They're different.
Of course,
dramatically different.
Sure. And that's when it comes to LGBTQ issues, you can feel like it's so out of the ordinary. But really, what we've tried to prove on this podcast is it's not out of the ordinary. It's normal. It's as normal as being, Dad, this is your line?
Oh, yes, left-handed.
Dad is left-handed if this is your first episode that you're joining us. And I mention that because Dad mentions that in about every single episode right now. But it would be about the same. Can you imagine if, my grandmother said, "What did I do to raise a left-handed boy? Did I do something wrong?"
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And LGBTQ issues are no different. There's nothing wrong with it, and you didn't do anything wrong. We are just being who we are.
So, did I do something wrong? The answer, definitely, I want to stress this, is absolutely not. Yes, as parents, we haven't done everything perfectly, but generally speaking, as loving parents who are raising a child or a group of children, yes, you treat them a little bit differently because they have different focuses, different ideas. One might, for example, be an artist, a really great artist, and then you can't expect the second one to have those same talents. It might be something else. They might have the talent of music or a variety of things.
My daughter is an amazing songwriter. I cannot believe the songs that she creates. I can't think to myself at all, I created that. There's something that I did. She just is that. None of the other kids were amazing songwriters like that. I'm not an amazing songwriter like that. You wrote some songs when you were young, but I don't think anywhere near what she has written.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that came from. That's the same with LGBTQ issues. It's just how things are, and every one of us is wired differently.
What if this is just a phase and I'm enabling something harmful? I mean, it could be, right? It could be just a phase. And if I promote this or help you, I might be creating a problem. I might be harming you rather than helping you. I think that's the concept that people think of when they think of maybe I should be working conversion therapy instead of promoting what you say you want to be, LGBTQ plus.
And I certainly sympathize with that. It makes sense why you might feel that way. But of course, then the flip side of it, what we have discovered and what psychologists have shown over and over again is that conversion therapy itself is actually really harmful. And the best thing that you can do is support your child while they figure themselves out. That's not enabling. I mean, only in the sense that I'm enabling my daughter to write songs. I mean, we do want to enable them to do the things that are authentic to them and who they are, but give them space to be able to figure out who they are. And
yes.
Yeah, just like anything, children need to spread their wings and figure out for themselves who they are. And the more that you give them space to be able to do that, they'll figure out who they really are. You're not letting them go down a wrong path.
It's not enabling, it's good parenting, which makes complete sense.
Right. And the real harm would come from the opposite, rejection or withdrawal of support. And that's something we never want to do as parents.
Am I a bad parent if I'm struggling to accept this? That was one I think nearly every parent asks themselves.
I understand, and I sympathize with this one as well. You want to be a good parent. Maybe you're already past the first and the second one, and you're saying, I want to be supportive, but boy, this is just hard for me. The first thing I want to tell you is cut yourself some slack. You are only human. And struggling does not make you a bad person. It just makes you honest. What you want to do is work through your struggle while still showing love. Bad parents would reject their child or stop trying to understand. So the very fact that you're even asking that question is showing that you're wrestling with something that's really important. I think you're asking actually not the wrong question, but the right question. And keep working with it. Keep doing things like going to PFLAG or finding other ways to support your child to learn to become a better ally, and you're on the right track.
Look for information that you can find out. You can find out things online. You can find out things from books. You can find out things from sharing with other parents who are going through the same thing. It's not uncommon. But looking at the next question, this is one that your mom and I both struggled with in the very beginning. What will people at our church say, or at work, what will they say? What will they say when we get together for Thanksgiving, that kind of thing? What are our friends going to say? I don't want to tell anybody about this.
It can seem shameful.
Yeah.
It seems like this is something we need to keep hidden. Almost like if you had a child that was an alcoholic or a drug addict.
Right. That's a good analogy.
And nobody wants to say, hey, I got great news. Let me tell you about my drug addict child.
Yeah,
of
right.
course. But you still have concern, and you know that everyone around you would have concern as well, but not concern in the sense of being happy, but a concern in the sense of, oh, what can we do? How can we help?
You know, that analogy of the child who is a drug addict, I can see where there's a lot of parallels, because once you want to, in the beginning, you want to tell no one. we're going to just hide that, keep it to ourselves. But when you finally do decide to make it public, there's a relief to that. And suddenly you find there are people out there that are supporting you and being part of it and saying, here is the kind of things that we understand you're going through. And it's much more helpful. As soon as you do that, as soon as you make it public, it makes everything much easier.
It's just like for your child when they come out of the closet. They've been trying to keep this from you for a very long time.
Yep.
We don't oftentimes think about the fact that the parent has to come out as well. But once you do, you will feel much better.
Will my child ever be truly happy? Well, I don't think I would doubt that in the least. I can think of so many people that I've talked to, and I've never had one say once they've come out that they were unhappy that they came out, that it made them happier. I know of a couple that was on here twice, as a matter of fact, that talked about how happy they were once they got together. And one of them had been married and left got a divorce. And now the two of them are together. We also have that Muslim couple, a very happy couple. We enjoyed our interview with them, and you could see they were just very comfortable, very content with their life.
I think when you're trying to stop being your authentic self, it takes so much energy to hold things back, to pull things back, you're pushing yourself to not be who you really are. And when you get to finally drop those walls and be who you really are, you don't have to try any longer. You just show up authentically. You're not having to think about, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I behaving the right way? And when somebody comes out, there is a sense of joy and life like they have never experienced before. I understand being worried, will they ever be really happy? But the more that you are there for them, supporting them and saying, I stand with you as you figure out who you are, the more you're going to be setting the way for them to find that happiness.
We have had many conversations on this podcast about that very thing. And I've never heard you say that you've ever regretted it.
No. At first, it was really hard because of all of the things that I had to give up. That was exceptionally difficult.
Of course.
Because of my life situation. But I have never once regretted the transition, being who I am, anything at all. I have never once. Sometimes I will joke about it and I will say, well, I've actually regretted it a number of times. And that number, of course, is 0.
Yes.
Another dad joke, but just throw that in right in the middle there.
How am I going to explain this to the other kids? How am I going to explain this to your sister or your brothers? You don't have any brothers. I'm using that as an example.
Right. But I have children. And when Kelly came out, how did we talk about it? And Kelly chose not to talk about it really, other than to sort of let people come to their own understanding as they, as they learned about him. So,
but when you came out, it was a little more difficult for the older kids. You had 7 kids. The younger ones pretty much accepted it right away. But some of the older ones had a little bit more challenge with it.
Yeah, you would almost think that the older ones would have more understanding, but the older ones also had a lot more emotional investment. So the same thing with siblings. I'm not going to say that it's necessarily going to be easy for them, just like it's not easy for anyone. But always, truth is better than keeping things a secret. And anytime you have to put the added pressure on of, we don't want anyone to know, it always makes things harder. Think about every TV show that you've ever seen where somebody keeps a secret. Does it ever go well? No, it is always a plot device to drive that thing along. I think about every single episode of Three's Company? And there was always something where they had to lie to the landlord and they were trying to keep it until at the end it finally came up, but there was always misunderstandings the whole time. It is never good. Obviously, Three's Company was pretty staged and not how real life is. But the point is, when you put that extra pressure on of we're not going to let people know about this, the worse that it is and the quicker that things come out, the much better off you are.
You're probably wondering about anger and how you deal with that, or how do you support somebody when you're trying to figure this out yourself? And what if I'm creating some kind of damage that's going to create problems with the relationship forever? We'll be talking about that and a lot more right after this.
Hi, I'm Andy Barrett, a Lutheran pastor and a supporter of this podcast. I see Transcendent as a ministry. I've pointed many people toward these recorded conversations full of so much heart and care and warmth, as well as some of Joe's jokes, which are hands down the worst part of this podcast. But even they make me smile. I'm one of the many genuinely blessed by Transcendent, and I encourage you to join me in supporting this podcast by giving as little as $3 a month. Go to transcendent.com and click support.
What if my child wants medical transition? How young is too young?
That's a great question. And I'll be honest, it's not one that I feel qualified to answer. I don't think Dad feels qualified to answer that either. And I'm not sure who is. Well, no, that's not true. I know exactly who is. I don't know among my friends who would be, but I can tell you who is qualified to answer that. And that's a medical professional. Specifically a medical professional that specializes in gender care. They know all of the things. There are medical guidelines. There are protocols. The experts know what is best there, and I would trust them. You hear so much if you turn on the news or if you listen to the politicians don't know any better either. But yet they will claim like they know, like they're just speaking from common sense. Look, I don't know, you don't know, and neither do they. But if you trust the person that has gone to school specifically for this thing and you say, I'm worried about what the puberty blockers would do, or I'm worried about what kind of long-term problems we might be having. I'm worried if we put it off, what kind of long-term problems we would have. Trust the professional, because I can't diagnose you for a medical problem. I can't tell you if you're having cancer or if you're sick or you got the flu or anything, because I'm not a medical professional. I'm also not a gender medical professional, and neither are you. Trust the professionals.
Am I supposed to pretend I'm not grieving the future that I imagined? And I can tell you, this definitely is something that I identify with. When you and I were working together, you were being groomed to take over the company. And suddenly, that all fell apart. Suddenly, that was not the future. But then, as we all know, as good parents, when we plan the future for our children, it may not be what they want. And that makes it really difficult for them. They want to please us maybe, but they also want to please themselves. I remember the movie Dead Poets Society.
Good movie.
Oh, a great movie. And that was one where the son tried to do what his father wanted. He was in college and his father wanted him to be following in his own footsteps, but it wasn't what he wanted. Ultimately, that movie really drove home the fact that everybody has their right to run their own life, ultimately, and be who they want to be as their authentic self. And it's not for us as parents to make that decision for them. It's for them to do that.
I think it can be really hard, especially when we start off as literally the ones that are doing everything for our children, and then we get less and less. We have to wean ourselves off from that. Originally, we have to wean them, right? Because we're literally having to give them a bottle or breastfeed them. And then we go to where we have to make every meal for them and do everything for them and help them get dressed and change diapers and do all of those things. And then you do a few less things and a few less things, and you send them off to school and they have a little more freedom and a little more freedom. By the time they get to the point where they know that they are LGBTQ, you are no longer at the place where you can treat them like the young child that they once were. And you can think of your job as much more being somebody who helps to cultivate who they are rather than trying to force them into the mold of who you want them to be.
If you cultivate them into that mold, you will end up with two people unhappy, you and the child. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So if one of your children comes back after a freshman year in college and says, Dad, I want to be a frogman, that's going to be okay with you.
I don't know what that means.
Will my child still need me the same way? They look to us often as people who are going to give them good, honest advice that is going to be best for us. Are they going to follow us? Are they going to respect us? Are they going to look at us as their guide, as their mentor?
Maybe you're feeling that way, that why are they even going to need me anymore now? But no, they still need your guidance. They still need your love. They still need your support. They're a different person than maybe you expected that they would be, but they are still your child. Maybe they're using they, them pronouns now. Maybe they've come out as gay or lesbian. Maybe they've told you that they're transgender or something else in the LGBTQ plus rainbow of diversity. That's okay. They're just discovering who they are, but they still need you like they ever have. And in fact, they probably need you even more now that they've come out to you.
I know my mother died when she was 86 years old, and I visited her very often. I called her every week on the phone, and I visited her at least monthly. She lived about 50 miles from me, but we were very close, and I often would talk to her about a variety of things. When she died, there was a void there for me as the child. You wouldn't think there would be. What's an 86-year-old person who really doesn't have much connection anymore because they're homebound? What can they offer to us? I could tell you it was a lot. It meant a lot for me to say some of the things, talk about some of my plans or talk about some of the situations with raising our kids. I never looked for advice, but I always looked for confirmation. Here's an interesting question. I've thought this many times. What if I say the wrong thing and damage our relationship forever?
Relationships just are not that fragile when they're built on love. If you have invested into that relationship, it is the same as like putting money into a bank account. The concern comes when you have not been investing love. If all that you've been investing into the relationship is criticism or hurt or nagging, well, then I would say you have bigger issues than not saying the right thing. But when you have been constantly investing love and concern and care for them, we all know in the context of relationships, nobody gets it all right. They're going to understand that you'll get it wrong sometime. But make sure that you're continuing to invest in love, continuing to show that while you may not get it and you may not say all the things right, you're there, you love them unconditionally.
And I know about that unconditional love because when you were very small, I'm trying to think, maybe 5, I wrote a song, My Best Friend is Raya. My best friend is Raya. Wow. And that was when you were 5. And as you grew, I felt that way all the time. And when you came out, I did have the feeling I lost a son. And I knew that, but I wasn't going to lose that relationship. And today, I think you're a stronger best friend than you've ever been.
Yeah. And just like we were running the company together, now we're running a podcast together, and
Yes.
we're happy to be here.
How do I support them when I'm still figuring this out for myself?
You're going to know the answer to this one right away, because if you're a parent, you already know that you don't know the answers to any of this. You get a baby and nobody gives you a book. Nobody gives you a manual. You just have to figure things out. And maybe you go and you get some advice. Maybe you go get a book somewhere and you find out very quickly that book is wrong about a whole lot of things. Nobody ever tells you what to do. The only thing that we can do is show up and be our authentic selves and help them to be their authentic selves. It's not a question of, are you going to get things wrong? You are going to get things wrong. It's not a question of, you have to have it all figured out. You're not going to have it all figured out. Nobody ever does. But that's not what parenting is about. Nobody's ever asked you to have it all figured out.
Sometimes I'm angry or confused. Is that okay? Or should I not share that? Or should I not tell you that I'm angry or that I'm confused? Are you sure it's okay to do that, to be okay? Or should I try to just always be happy and supportive when I can't really feel that inside?
Well, that's a great question also. Now, I taught my kids early on, you can't control your feelings, but you can control your actions, because they would want to say, well, it's not my fault that I hit her. I was angry. What could I do? When we're adults, we know better than that. You cannot control your feelings. The feelings themselves are not moral failures. What matters is how you act despite the feelings. Feeling angry with somebody else that's not your child is perfectly acceptable. But try to keep those angry feelings away from your child where it can do actual harm.
How can I accept all this with what I have been taught? What I've been taught was a little different in the church, and what they said, that was a little different from what I thought about sexuality. If you remember, I was one of those people who knew all the jokes and used all those. How can I just change overnight?
Well, I think one thing that you'll find is that the call to love is bigger than any specific teachings about sexuality or gender.
Boy, that's true.
If you're looking for ways to get past your understanding, especially if that's rooted in a faith tradition, I would encourage you to listen to some of the episodes that we have done on this podcast. How to reconcile with faith, how to reconcile with the scriptures, how to reconcile with your understanding of God and what God wants. Because we see all through Christianity and all of the major world traditions, loving those that are closest to us is the most important thing that we can do.
What if my spouse and I disagree? How are we going to handle this? This is a tough one, I think.
Yes, it is a hard one. It's not an easy answer to this. And so here again, I'm going to say you're probably not going to find an easy answer on a podcast. I wish I had the magic answer and could just say, well, all you need to do is say, Martha, arrodetteras ne, and then suddenly it would work. But there are no magic words that you can utter. There's no magical thing that you can do. But what you can do is get counseling. Because your child needs both parents on the same team. So you maybe can't work things out, but if you can get together with somebody that, again, their whole job, their whole training has been to help people learn to communicate, they can help you work through the differences, the issues, and help to get both of you on the same page as parents so that you can be the effective parents that you want to be. Nobody is trying to ruin their kids' lives. But one of the things that can ruin it most quickly is if there's division between parents. So find somebody to help you work through those struggles.
It is all about keeping the family together. That is absolutely critical. Next question you might be asking is, can I still hold my beliefs and love my child well? Oh, many parents find ways to do both. There are parents that still haven't come to full acceptance, but they've come to full acceptance of saying they're not going to lose you, like I first did.
You don't have to be on the same page with your faith and your child with the same faith. You don't have to be all figured out with all of these things. You just have to commit to love and say, I'm going to do my best. Just prioritize their well-being over resolving all the theological questions, and love is going to work itself out.
What if part of me wishes this wasn't happening?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
And the first thing I want to say is that's honest and it's understandable. Lots of parents feel that way, especially at the beginning. But the goal isn't to never have a bad thought like that. The goal is to make sure that you don't let that thought drive your actions. You want to focus on loving your own son, daughter, or child. When they've come out to you, be there, be present, and then let yourself feel those feelings, but work on them somewhere else so that when you come back, you can be there fully present, fully engaged, and fully loving for your child who needs you. And I hope that there are some things here, if you're a parent and you're going through this, that have helped you on your journey. That's what we're here for. We're coming back week after week to try to give you tips and things that you can do to strengthen your relationships, whether you're a parent, whether you're a loved one, a friend, a sibling, or if you are LGBTQ plus yourself, you can understand what your loved one is going through.
These questions that we've addressed are some of the questions that people have. You may have other questions, and we want to hear those. Email us at transcendent@gmail.com.
We want to do a shout out to our listeners in Gardnerville, Nevada. It's a town of 6,000 near Minden, Nevada, which is the county seat. It's a wonderful place. Everything we've read up on it. We're grateful to have you listening.
And with that, we'll see you Monday.